Yeah.
A lot of guys end up building things for themselves that they think will make their lives easier.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's good. So if the government is using tech to start digitizing all land records.
Yeah.
So they're making their life easier. And a side product is actually they can make the consumer's life easier as well, like the public's life easier. That's great.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, especially on the entrepreneur side, you don't see enough market research happening in advance.
Yeah.
And you get up, and that's where you get some of your apps around pregnancy that don't have as much of a sticking point because the market isn't there yet.
Or the life that has been lived by that person hasn't reached the point that, I go back to the Steve Jobs point, which is, he'd gone out with a market research group and said, do you want a tablet? I don't think anybody would have said yes at that point.
Right.
It's only in the doing that you discover. So there's two ways. There's the instinctive approach where somebody gets something right. I won't say by accident because they have a good feel for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the approach where you sit down and you do the rational, qualitative groups and the surveys.
And you can get left behind by the market if you do too much of that as well.
Yes. Yeah. No,
so,
absolutely.
I think we have a really interesting kind of coming together of many things at one time right now in East Africa, and that is we have a sizable amount of kids coming out of university and also guys who've been in business thinking about doing their own things, so entrepreneurs who are looking at the space differently. But we also have a fair amount, as of this year, actually, not even as of last year, but this year, starting to see more seed capital come into play, which is actually very much needed. We need a lot more experimentation happening with the startup side so that we get more of what we really need, which is groups that have had success and can get mid-cap investment and actually grow into real businesses, right?
Yeah. You need investors to be able to walk away saying, 1 out of 5 came good and we're very happy.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, and that comes with some extra advantages too, which is as we see the seed capital coming in, a lot of it's external, which trains up the local investors on the opportunities in tech as well. As there's still a lot of money in the city, in specific in Nairobi, but also in the region, East Africa. So, but that money isn't being put into technology, tech startups for the most part.
It's because people are uncomfortable, right? I mean, we're talking to
you can't put your hands on
Cape Town VC guy who was saying, they just have to get comfortable. They have to know that they're not going to be ripped blind by people that they don't know.
Well, it's a challenge too because the entrepreneurs here have to come to terms with what it is to actually start up a company and then run a business, which is different, right? Absolutely. And then on top of that, learn that they have to answer and respond to these investors who are out there. So we've got that going on. At the same time, we still have a lot of that. I mean, because of just the pure geographic location of Nairobi, it's the hub for all these NGOs, aid groups. So there's a lot of money coming from that side as well, which has its pros and cons. One of them is that it brings in a lot of money, which is a good thing in some ways. But it's also negative in that it takes guys off of what they could be doing elsewhere. So what I mean by that is there's a young entrepreneur that I knew very well a couple years back. He was doing a new startup, didn't pan out. Right? So that's fine. You have your failures, you move on. So 6 months later, he's working for a big, he's working for USAID, making a lot of money. He's looking at this space and saying, why should I ever go back to do a startup? I can make $50,000 to $60,000 a year, which is good money here. And so,
but he's saying almost what I remember talking in Ghana, and people were saying, my parents always say to me, why are you doing this? You could be a doctor. You could be, you name it, doctor, lawyer, etc., etc. So it's quite a hard choice to make.
So if you're a young person today, the opportunity costs that you have to weigh are actually very, very big. And the upside, sure, is higher over here as an entrepreneur. But you still have to pay back the debt you owe to having gotten to where you are. With the family, as well as just face the reality of the amount of failure there is in startups. And the culture of that we still have to shift here of allowing failure to be acceptable. So that just because you failed once doesn't mean we're not going to trust you again. It just means that we're going to, we hope you learn from that. And so that has to be grown here as well. So anyway, there's a lot going on. It's really exciting. We're seeing more hubs and labs pop up. You know, we're seeing it from the university side. We're seeing Equity Bank put in a lab as well.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing other ones like the iHub pop up over the city, and that's a good thing. We do need more of it. Right?
We've talked a lot about failure. I think we owe it to ourselves to talk about the successes that you mentioned, M-Pesa.
Yeah.
In my mind, unfortunately, the successes are not many fingers on many hands. But what for you has been successes out of the ICT4D space?
Yeah. So I mean, I can talk about that from a couple different levels. One is just seeing how many companies get either started up or kind of from just the space we work and live in here. You know, the iHub and the M-Lab. And seeing those companies grow, we've seen 30 to 40 companies just get formed.
Yes.
Which is good.
Now, do they move out of the building?
Yeah, they do, especially when they get beyond a certain size. And some of them actually start externally and they find like their CTO here.
Yeah.
And then they never were here anyway, they just found each other here. So in many ways, like the iHub served as a real connection point more than anything else. But that's, so the success stories, people are looking for success stories a lot of times with consumer apps.
Yes.
It's actually one of the hardest places to have success.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people and there's a lot of media around it.
Yeah. But I was thinking specifically though in terms of ICT4D.
Oh, in ICT4D successes?
Yeah, successes there.
Oh. Well, okay. I don't know if you want to count it as, but you know, we can use the M-Pesa example again.
Yeah.
There's no greater success in the ICT4D space than M-Pesa because we have people, you know, the poorest of the poor across Africa.
Yeah.
The poorest of the poor across Kenya are able to, you know, send and receive money now in a way that never was possible before, and the transaction cost is lower than any other option. Right? Yes. So, you know, that makes a big difference, right? At the very foundational level across everything. Yeah. Payments and money is a foundational element. So that's a great example of a success in ICT4D, and it's a big one. Other successes, we've seen some startups come in kind of that tech space. I think the one that I would count to be really is on its way to being a bigger success is Kilimo Salama. Yeah. That's the insurance for crops using, it's a combination between Syngenta, Safaricom, and I can't remember the insurance company. Yeah. And basically, people can go and pay for insurance with M-Pesa, an agent, and they get their crop insured. And what happens is there's a weather station on each of the towers. Yeah. And so if there's not a certain amount of rainfall during a certain amount of time of the year, they're automatically getting the payout for their crop because they know it won't grow. Okay. Yeah, things like that. And that's really just a fantastic, I think it's a really fantastic model of blending of, again, good ICT4D money with commercial enterprises that make it work. Yeah. That have the kind of the macro high-level reach and the micro really serving the demand of a single person. Yes. Right? And that's what a lot of things don't have. Yeah. As far as other ICT4D successes, I mean, you're right.
We're struggling a bit, aren't we?
Yeah, they're hard to come up with, but you know, there's a couple of them, yes. Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of things doing interesting things, but that's not quite the same as being successful.
And of course, I have no research to back this up, so I'll just say it anyway. Though I think if you look at all the money put into ICT4D and you look at all the money put into commercial enterprises, that you're going to find more successes per dollar for your commercial enterprises than you are for your ICT4D dollars.
But to be fair to that, that's likely to be the case, isn't it? Because it's easier to predict what the market will come up with.
That's true. That's true.
In some ways.
Yeah, you are
than it is if you're working with a rural woman in remote area of, you know, etc., etc. That kind of predefines a sort of
if you're
a level of failure.
If your persona of a person you're trying to serve.
Failure, especially.
Yeah. And you know, to be fair too, on that aid side, there is need for money to support, for free money to support public goods that aren't market based. Yes. So sometimes that has to do with education, sometimes it's roads, things like that. That's fine. Yeah, so we understand that, right? Yeah. And I think that, again, my main argument against ICT4D activity in that space is when it undermines the market-based approach that would fill it anyway. Yes. Sometimes it has to be led by the government, and sometimes it would be led by private sector, but maybe it's not being done by either because of the funds that are coming in for free.
Absolutely. And in a way, it's sort of going around government in some ways.
Right. Well, it's
simply a possibility.
Yeah, it's actually just bypassing it.
Yeah. Erik, thanks for the conversation today. Thank you.